Hi, everybody. Happy Friday, and welcome to Design Lab's Alumni Spotlight webinar with our amazing guest, Nikita Washington, who is joining us today to share a bit more about her experiences in the UX Academy program with you all. Before we get started, I'd love to just see who all is joining us. So if you wouldn't mind saying hi in the chat really quickly. Tell us who you are, where you're tuning in from, if you are already enrolled in a course with Design Lab or perhaps considering joining one. We'd love to just hear a bit more about our audience. And before we jump into a conversation with Nikita about her experiences in the program, I'd love for her to just give us a quick introduction. So Nikita, can I turn it over to you to just tell us a little bit about who you are and what your journey was like leading up to enrolling in UX Academy?
Sure. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nikita Washington. I am a UX designer at Ally. Before I was a UX designer, I actually was an educator. So I taught middle school and high school English for about 7 years, but it wasn't a linear journey. I did have pockets where I worked in ed tech. Also, I worked in marketing, in particular at Capitol Records as a digital marketing specialist, where I really helped to build the socials for Motown and Astralwerks Records. So during the onset of the pandemic, I realized that I wanted to change. I definitely love my students, but my mental health was a little bit more important. So I did some preliminary research and found out about instructional design. And I thought that that was where I was going to go, simply because, coming from education, instructional design made the most sense. But I also UX design, and that's what was pulling a little bit more. And that's what I ended up going with. And I'm so happy that I selected. I've had great mentors who I still am in contact with to this day, and I love them very dearly, because if it wasn't for them, I truly wouldn't be where I am today.
Amazing. Thank you for, giving us just that kind of quick snapshot of what the journey was like. We're going to definitely dive in a bit more with some more specific questions that I have for you. And for those who are joining us, if you have any questions for Nikita as we're talking, please drop those over in the questions section of the chat. I'll be keeping an eye out on the questions that you have so that we can, incorporate them into the conversation, and we'll leave a bit of time for a direct Q&A with Nikita towards the end of the presentation today. So I guess just to start off, Nikita, if you can jump in a little bit in more detail, what was your process like once you realized that UX UI design was something that you wanted to pursue as opposed to perhaps instructional design? How did you go about figuring out what would be the right learning environment or way to gain that skill set?
Yeah, so for me, being an educator, I know that I need when I speak to individuals who have gone on this journey, they either choose one of three. The first one is they go back and get their master's degree, like a more traditional way of learning. I already have a master's, so that was not an option. Don't get me wrong, I did look at that being a potential opportunity for me, but I realized that's what I wanted to do. The second is, of course, a boot camp, and I got boot camps through one of my friends. So she actually works in banking, and she stated that in the corporate world, you definitely don't have to go back into a traditional school. You can actually go get a certification, and they will hire you just the same. And I was like, are you serious? I can really do that? I don't have to go back to a 4-year. And she was like, no. So the thing about it is, I really wanted to be clear about that. And the third option is, of course, self-taught.
Hey, Nikita. I'm not sure if you see in the chat, but it looks like the video for you has been disabled because we're getting this bandwidth message again. So I've turned my video off and it didn't resolve it. Everyone can still hear, so why don't we keep the conversation going? Just because, we obviously still want to hear all of your great insights. If there's anything you can do on your side related to like moving to a different location slightly closer to the router or anything, that might also be helpful.
Yeah, so just give me one moment and I
Okay,
will just try to toggle my Wi-Fi on and off. Let's
awesome.
see.
Okay. Thanks everyone for bearing with us through through our technical difficulties. In the meantime, while we're waiting for Nikita to rejoin, are there any questions folks have right now that you want to stick in the chat that we make sure to cover in our conversation today? Definitely feel free to drop those over there.
Can you see me now?
Yeah, I see you. What about everyone in the chat? Can you give us a thumbs up? I see a yes. Okay.
Sorry, I'm going to toggle
Amazing.
my work computer because I know that takes up a lot of bandwidth as well.
Cool. Okay. Thank you. Thanks so much, everyone, for your patience and flexibility. And for those of you who have started putting questions in the chat, as you can see, those very quickly disappear as other folks are contributing. So if you would please put those over in the questions section, you'll see that questions icon in the lower right corner of your screen. That will make sure that we don't lose track of any of your great questions and we can make sure to talk through them with Nikita. Cool. Okay. So Nikita, you had kind of very eloquently outlined the different learning options available. And of course, you ended up settling on a boot camp. So I don't know if there was anything else that you wanted to share just about why you ultimately chose Design Lab before we dive more specifically into your experience within the program itself.
Yeah, so to be honest, I chose Design Lab for a myriad of reasons. One of those reasons being the mentors. So I knew it was really important for me to learn from an actual professional. There's no type of shade or anything towards somebody who decides to go more of the self-taught route. I just know what was going to work best for me. And when I saw the type of mentors that Design Lab offered, I knew I definitely had to move forward with that. And then also the diversity. It was really great because I'm a researcher. That was a part of the design process that I love the most. Some people do not like the research process or phase, but to so many people see what they had to say about Design Lab. Actually, recipient of the dollar. So this was really important to me to really be in a program where other people look like me and were successful.
Thanks for sharing that. It's helpful to hear you walk through. I didn't realize I had muted myself. Yeah, those different considerations, I think those are things that a lot of people who are looking to get into this field are also considering and weighing. So yeah, that's awesome just to know about your own journey. I'd love to hear a bit more, like once you started UX Academy overall, how did you find the program? What was your favorite part? And what was your biggest challenge?
Oh. Wow. How did I find the program? I found the program to be extremely rigorous. There were many a times where I thought I was not going to be able to do it. Now, when I took the foundations course, I had a great mentor by the name of Mariana. She is a UX researcher, and I was really confused as to why I received a UX researcher for a UI course. But I truly enjoyed working with her because she actually gave me data to back up why UX and UI designers make the decisions that they make. And I believe that that was something that was truly informative to me. But throughout the program, the actual boot camp, I was really taken aback by how much information there was to learn, a design process as a whole. Really working with my mentor to figure out what I excelled in, what I needed to work in. And what I found to be extremely challenging was the time management because I never had a lot of time. It's really that I found to be very challenging.
I think that time management is something that is one of the challenges for a lot of our students, just because often this style of learning isn't something that they have done before. So it's kind of an additional skill you have to pick up along with learning UX UI design. Were there any strategies that you found particularly helpful to address that time management aspect?
Honestly, no. I tried. I really did. I tried to. So basically, I was working full time, and I said from 9 to 5, I would actually do my job. And then I would take a break for about an hour and 30 minutes. And from 6 to 9 or from 6 to 10, I would do design lab work. And then, of course, on the weekend, I would pretty much work all day. Unfortunately, that wasn't always the case. I found times where when I was supposed to be doing my actual work, I was doing my design lab work. Um, yeah. And it was really, really difficult because I get tired and exhausted extremely easily. And I'm the type where when I'm tired, I'm going to go to sleep. I'm going to lay down. And that was something where, especially when I got to the wireframes, because it was such a tedious and laborious task, I found myself really having to chunk it together to ensure that by the time I had a conversation with my mentor, I was there.
That's really helpful insight. I know everyone's a little bit different. I find I'm quite the opposite. When I get tired, I don't automatically recognize it about myself, and I keep pushing myself to continue on. So I think even
Oh,
just
I
that
do.
strategy,
I
yeah, of
recognize.
like be kind to yourself, put your well-being first, so that when you do show up to work on the coursework, you can really, be productive in that time. That's great. I'd love to hear a bit more about the course itself and the portfolio projects that you worked on. Could you tell us a little bit about which projects you completed, and also how you selected the projects that you chose to work on, and just any sort of aspect of that process of completing the portfolio that you think might be insightful for our listeners?
Oh my gosh. As far as the projects, I wanted something that was going to be relatable and was also going to be fun. So I try to make sure every single project I selected, if I it would de it would basically explain to the I'm sorry if y'all hear the people do their thing. Of course they were doing what I'm trying to be helpful to others. Um, but as I was stating, I really decided to select projects where I could see myself working in those fields and in those industries. So, of course, I completed Mirror, but I did not label it as Mirror. I labeled it as Stranger. And one thing that I remember Emily in particular telling us in the beginning during our orientation was we did not have to use the name of those projects because you all have to remember there are so many people who are coming through Design Lab who are also looking for a course. And sometimes it can be easy to identify who is coming from which boot camp. So one thing I would like to tell everyone who can hear the sound of my voice, please make sure that you be a little creative and you change the names of those Design Lab given projects, because I saw so many people still use Mirror and I'm like, okay. So, and the thing about it was when I had interviews, companies really thought that Stranger was real, and I let them believe it too. So, now I, my first project, of course, was Stranger. Second, if I'm correct, was I worked for a company, a tech company, so I did a project for them I did not put that in my portfolio because it sucked. The third project was Tinder, because one day I really want to be a UX or a product designer for Tinder, Hinge, Bumble. I love dating apps. They need to be better. I want to be a part of Meta. Um, and then my love to travel. So I created some type of a travel app that rewards people who give back to their communities. So I would just say really try to select projects, whether they be from design or things that you choose that you really could see yourself working into. But we'll see how that for me when I talk about my current job.
Yeah, I'm excited to get a little bit more into that in just a minute as well. And I know that some of the questions we've already gotten in the chat are really specific towards that job search process. One of the recent ones actually came from Lydia, who was saying that she's really hoping that studying UX UI design will allow her to bring more creativity into her career. She currently works in military contracting and wonders if you find that there's a lot of creativity used in this field. So it sounds like you started embracing this very creative approach even while you were in the course. And I'm curious if you find that you're able to bring that creativity into your role now, or perhaps you have some other thoughts about that.
Yeah, so I tend to downplay my creativity simply because I am not artistic. So I remember when I spoke to Emily, who is a coordinator for the lab, like, Emily, girl, look, I don't know how to draw. Are y'all gonna accept me? Because I really don't know how to draw. And she was like, UX really doesn't have anything with that. It's really about skills, your creativity in that sense. And um, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go with it. And I was able to show my creativity, especially during the program, because you're able to realize how far you can take it. You're really able to see how far you can take it. And sometimes you may find doubting your abilities, but definitely push forward. So to the who did answer that question, as far as my current job, I am able to see, but not in the sense probably what you're thinking, because into an actual UX role, depending upon the industry and the role. Let me just be clear about that. I work for a corporate, I work in corporate America. So there's, and that's what I wanted. I didn't want you to just let me roam free because I didn't think I was going to be successful in my first role with that. Now, as I look for other roles in the distant future, I may try to go ahead and try to find something where I can really be more creative.
That's really interesting to hear that you very intentionally approached the job search to look for a role that was going to be in a more sort of structured industry or field. And yeah, it'll be fun to kind of see your progress as your career grows too, potentially onto the next role. Yeah, very cool. Um, I would love to touch just a little bit more on your experience in the course before we then really transition into the job search and the kind of the working world. I had just a couple of other questions for you that hopefully will be helpful to some of the current students that we've got tuning in. So I'm curious if there were any specific resources that you found yourself turning to frequently as you were going through the course. And one of the questions that we actually had from one of the folks tuning in was Jessica had asked what design lab resources helped you the most. So whether those are design lab resources or other resources you found along the way, what was most helpful for you?
The design lab resources definitely helped me. I apologize that I'm not able to remember them verbatim to tell you like, oh, it was this particular one, because they all help me. You have to remember that I did not know anything. So anything I could just kind of get my hands around, I embraced it. I read about it. I was not one of those individuals who was like, oh, I'm gonna read all the books during design lab and things of that nature. And once again, if that's what you're doing, that's totally fine. That's what works best for you. But I knew that I was going to get a job as a UX designer. And that's not me being cocky. That's just me. I really like to put things into the atmosphere. And I said, I'm going to have time to really learn beyond what Design Lab has taught me. You know, I'm a lifelong learner. So I didn't want to overwhelm myself with so much information that I didn't know how I was going to use everything that was given to me. I can see that now as I'm in a role because I'm really focused on my job at the moment. Now, other resources that I did use was, y'all, I'm gonna tell y'all the truth. I did a lot of Google searches and like UX design CC, I believe was very helpful. There were a few other websites that I utilized as well that my particular mentor to me. So what I would say is reach out to me on LinkedIn, everybody who is on, and I will send you some additional resources that I've been sending to people who's been reaching out to me. And also, I would say embrace two things. Embrace going to events. So, of course, Design Lab has their events. You're here today. That's great. So that's the first step. But go beyond Design Lab. I went to a event with ADP lists, and I saw a Black woman who had a big afro, because under here I got the afro, and I related to her. And so I reached out to her, and she became my mentor while I was still in Design Lab. And come to find out, she was actually a Design Lab mentor already. So I had not only my mentor, AJ, who is a senior UX designer at Amazon, but I also had Nayani, who is now a senior product designer at LinkedIn. I say this because really connect with people who want to help you. There are so many designers out there who really do want to provide you with guidance. Just reach out to them. Do not be afraid. Everybody is not going to respond sometimes. It is what it is. But there are plenty of us who will, and I am one of them. And the other resource I would say that I think a lot of people are using is ADP List. They have like a wealth of UX designers, and it's free 99. You can speak to so many people from so many places, and it's free. So utilize that as well.
I think those were all some really great insights to share. I think just going back to the first point you made of there being almost an overwhelming amount of resources, I think it can definitely feel like drinking from a fire hose a bit, especially right at the very beginning, where it feels like there's everything to learn and there's everything available. So where do you really begin? And I love your recommendations about, just take what you've got right in front of you at face value. And then as you kind of get into, maybe the swing of being a student of learning design, the resources your mentor can share, seeking out these other external resources like ADP List is a great one. And finding people that are in the industry that you can really relate to and see yourself in. I think that point you made about finding another Black woman whose hair looks like yours, is not to be undervalued at all. I think you can have more of that confidence of your own future success when you see someone like you who's already doing the thing.
Most definitely. And I would just say this in addition, I'm a Black trans woman. And I have no problem letting people know that. If you look on my LinkedIn, my banner says Black, trans, and a designer. And, some people are like, oh my God, you're really saying that out loud and things of that nature. But I'm like, there have been so many trans people who have reached out to me who are trying to get in technology simply because they see someone who is doing it like them. So it's really helpful because a lot of trans individuals are unemployed. They are not able to get jobs. So to be a trans individual who was working for a major company, making six figures, like that is a really big thing. And I want people who have gone through my experiences to understand that they can do it too.
That's incredible. Yeah, to your point, it's a little bit like you need to see people doing the thing that you're striving to do to feel really confident and empowered to do it. And also, somebody has to be the first person. And that's not always easy to be the first person who says, like, I'm putting it on my LinkedIn, I'm putting it everywhere. I'm a Black trans woman in this field. And, this is what I'm doing. And here are all my skills. So, it's amazing that you are that, willing to be that kind of first person or the person who's kind of leading that path. And hopefully there are folks who are tuning in who find that really inspirational, and we can just kind of grow that, community as well, so that there's even more people that can be that resource. So yeah, thank you. I'd love to shift now a bit, if you don't mind, into that job search process, just because I know we've gotten lots of questions in the chat already. There are folks who are quite eager to hear about your experience. So before we jump into any of their specific questions, do you want to just tell us a little bit about, how did you approach the job search process, and anything you want to share about that at a high level, I guess?
Be strategic. And what I mean by that is a lot of us tend to say, okay, this is our first role. We just simply want to get in. Don't do that to yourself. Because if you end up getting a role that you do not like, you're going to be miserable. You all are finding out right now. And if you are not within the design lab process, you will be at some point. The process is long and tedious. Now, in Design Lab, each project is generally about a month. So let me just keep it real with y'all. In my company, they just finished a project that they have been working on for 3 years. 3. So just make sure that you accept a position at a company in the field industry that is of interest to you. Don't do that yourself. So that's number one. I was very strategic. So what I did was I wrote down the top 5 industries where I would want to be in. And then I also said where I absolutely would not want to be. And education was one of them. Okay. Now, I'm not going to, I'm going to be honest with y'all. I did backslide a little bit because things were looking a little bleak for me. And I applied to an ed tech company, but I'm so glad I didn't get it because I would have been miserable. That's why I say really just be strategic in where you want to go and focus on it. Apply, apply, apply. Really work with your mentor. I had a great mentor. That's one thing I tell people all the time when they reach out to me about my experience at Design Lab. I had no bad mentors. Every last single one of them really inspired me, and Anthony was no different. He encouraged me. He told me I was going to get a job within 3 months. And I'm looking at him like, okay, you said it. So, and I ended up getting my job in 3 months, y'all. I really did.
And that was Anthony was your career coach that you were paired with during the career services phase of the program?
Yeah, he was my career coach, and he really gave me great advice. One of the things that he said to me was, you want every touch point that a hiring manager or a recruiter is going to see tell your story. So of course, your portfolio, your resume, your LinkedIn. Now, I've always been on LinkedIn. I've always kept it up to date. I really thought my LinkedIn was popping at the time, but he did an assessment and he was like, no, honey, you need to do some more work. And when you look at my LinkedIn now, it really has, oh my gosh, it's just, as I started to make updates and put things where they needed to be, I really started to get more views. And I'm so grateful to Anthony for that. And we did mock interviews. I was very embarrassed, I'm not going to lie, because I revered all of my mentors. So I did not want to embarrass them. And I remember I used to push off our little mock interviews. I'm like, oh, not this week, Anthony. I'm good. I'll try to do it on my own. And then, but when I did it, I was really nervous. But he told me I did a great job and really practice. I guess one other thing I would say that really helped me is, and I'll try to find the resource to send to people, but I think it's somewhere in the design lab space. It's like a whole bunch of questions that a designer, a mentor, I think just like listed within a spreadsheet. And it was going around design lab. And I utilized that. I thought ahead. I said, okay, I'm going to be meeting with the hiring manager. They're probably going to ask these particular questions. So what I did was I wrote a response for every single question. Yes, it was tedious. Yes, it got on my nerves. I'm an overthinker, but I did it. And when I had my interviews, I literally would have them on a digital sticky note. And when that person would ask me that question, I would scan my computer real quick and put it over their face and read it just like that.
I love that. I think it's incredible. It's really great to hear about how you had quite a systematic approach to the preparation, but I imagine that sort of process of really answering every possible question that someone might throw at you and filling out those sticky notes helped you to also then just be a bit more at ease and sort of personable in your actual interviews themselves and really represent yourself the best way that you could. So
yes, and I would just expound on that. Ladies and gentlemen, please know it is difficult. It's a process that will really I cried a lot. I'm not gonna lie, I really did cry a lot. I found myself just kind of like, I am never going to get a job. It was so hard, but they really want to know about your thought process. They want to know about the type of empathy that you have. They really want to know, how do you collaborate with others? So as I was stating, when I went through the different phases of the hiring process, I knew that the questions were going to change depending upon who was interviewing me. So what your hiring manager is going to ask you, you can't go in with that same mentality with the product manager or the engineer. So I've never worked with a product manager before. I've never worked with an engineer. I had to do my research and find questions that I thought they were going to ask me and be prepared. And that really helped, because when I wasn't doing that and just really kind of going off the cuff, it wasn't working. That's why nobody called me back.
It's kind of funny to see how you have that data to support the two approaches. But it's definitely true. The preparation and sort of intentional approach we've seen with lots of students is really successful in the job application. I'd love to hear a little bit about then your role now, if you wouldn't mind telling us, how did you first hear about it? And then what are your, what are you doing? How's it going?
Ooh, okay, so I think I lab in September of 2021. And I believe I posted on social media that I had graduated. I'm looking for you a young lady that I went to school with, college, she was like, hey, I work at Ally. See if any of these interest you and I'll refer you. Well, it's so crazy, y'all, because that previous week I saw those jobs and something said don't apply right now. I don't know why. I'm not lying. Something said don't apply. So I said to her, oh my God, I saw those. I'm really interested. I'm like, oh, thank you so much. So I applied. And I didn't hear anything until like late November, like around Thanksgiving. So my hiring process really happened throughout the holidays, which I know a lot of people, apparently, I didn't know this, that's the fact that I made it through the holiday hiring process without them like dropping the ball and forgetting about me is a big thing. People were like, well, they must have really liked you because, during the holiday season, they tend to just kind of forget about people, whatever. And it was very straightforward. I I don't know how. I don't know how. I did not have to present y'all. I did not have to do a whiteboard. All I had to do was talk and sell my personality. Now, at the ed tech company I was telling you all about, I did have to do a presentation. So just a side note, because I did not know this until the last minute. As you are working on your projects, Design Lab is going to have you do, I think, some type of a presentation. Now, my mentor was like, no, I don't want you to do that. I want you to really try to focus on what it's going to look like on your portfolio. Do whatever works best for you, but please know that you're going to have what is called a presentation deck. You're not going to be able to share screen and show your portfolio and talk about it like that. That's not how that works. You're going to have to have a presentation where you're going to have to go in depth with your slides on your design process. So start working on that now, because I found out at the last minute and it stressed me out trying to take everything from my portfolio and put it in presentation form. It was not easy. So go ahead and start working on that. That being said, I didn't have to do any of those with Ally. I just had to speak to my the recruiter, my hiring manager, and then my teammates. So it was like a group type of interview. And then I had 2 interviews with product directors.
Got it. Yeah, it sounds like it was an interesting trajectory and also a good just sort of example of how the hiring process is different for every given role. Like no two are going to be the exact same process, which I think is probably one of the other challenges of being in that job search mode, but also speaks to your advice of just, being super prepared so that whatever the the path ends up being, you're ready for it.
Yeah, and I forgot I didn't answer the second part of your question. So I'm a UX designer. That's my title, but my true title is actually senior analyst. Y'all don't ask. It's crazy, but I'm a UX designer. And I primarily focus on research and UX strategy. And it's really interesting because I'm really not about doing wireframes and things of that nature. It's fun, but it's so laborious, like I've stated before. So I really focus on UX strategy and coming up with a plan on how to move forward. Now, today is my 90 days. So I made it. I didn't think I was gonna make it, y'all. I'm trying to tell you, I was so nervous, because it's a lot of work. I told people when people reach out to me and we have things, I try to keep it real. This is the hardest I have ever worked in my entire life, and I'm 34 in a couple of years. A couple of weeks. Um, this has been hard. I have cried with this as well. I have had anxiety, I have had stress because it's just so much. And I've dealt with imposter syndrome. Luckily, I have a great manager who understands. I have a great mentor who works with me. I have a great team. Everybody has really uplifted me and understood that, okay, yeah, she doesn't know everything. We're not expecting her to know everything, but we want her to bring what she's learned from her boot camp. We like her for a reason and we hired her for a reason. They had to remind me of that. Like, look, stop getting down on yourself because we hired you for a reason. We didn't go with somebody else. We went with you. We want what Nikita can bring. And so I had to get over that in my head because it was really, really hard. And so I just started leading my own project about a couple of weeks ago. It has been really, really exciting, and very, very in depth. And I'll be presenting my findings to internal stakeholders very soon. So very exciting.
That's incredible. Congratulations. And there's been lots of emojis and congrats being shared in the chat as well. And also a lot of appreciation for your honesty and, you know, vulnerability about the fact that the journey isn't always sunshine and roses and you have to work quite hard. But it's really great to hear that that's also been quite rewarding and fulfilling along the way. And that you've had a great support network, you know, as you've started in this role too.
Most definitely.
So I'd love to, if you are game, just kind of transition more into some of the direct Q&As with the questions that we've gotten from our audience, because our sort of freeform conversation hasn't hit on all of the ones that they've asked, and I think they've been sharing some really good ones. So
yes, of course.
Cool. Okay, so one of the questions shared by Salome was, I'm coming from an engineering and supply chain background. I also have taken a 9-year break to be a mom to my young kids. I'm facing some reservations around my age and background holding me back in my success into this career shift after a big gap. So I wonder if there's any advice that you have for Salome about, you know, sort of pursuing this career change after, you know, working in different industries, maybe being seen as too old for a career shift, if that's a thing. What would you say?
Well, Salome, I'm 33, and even though that I guess is young, um, but there are so many young people in UX design. So I find myself feeling very old because there are 24, 25-year-olds who have years of experience, and here little old me coming in at 33, and they're not telling me what to do, but they're just on it. And I feel so it gets to me sometimes. But I also have to understand that this is my path in life. This was when it was going to happen for me. I'm a true believer and things happen as they're supposed to. I had to meet all of my wonderful students. Some of them are graduating very soon, and I had them in the 9th grade. I keep in contact with a lot of my kids. They're like, we are so proud of you that you went back because you're showing us like, hey, if we don't like this, we can go and do it. Now, one thing about me is I'm not going to stay nowhere where I'm not wanted and I don't have an interest in it. I'll get another job. I'll be all right. And so I think for you, don't let your age really keep you from going on this journey. It's just that a journey. There are so many people of various ages who are just getting into UX and they're doing an amazing job. So please don't ever let that stop you from doing what you want to do.
I think that's such good advice. I know I've had those same feelings of like, oh no, I haven't hit the benchmark milestone of whatever other people say is supposed to be success for this age. And I know it gives me a lot of, I guess, reassurance when you see those memes or whatever online that are like, Oprah didn't do all of her amazing things in life until her 50s, or, whatever it is, right? It's like, if Oprah wasn't doing this when she was, 33, I think it's okay. you know?
It's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great perspective, and that, also just given the nature of the field of UX UI, it's still like quite new. People are still finding out about it. So the fact that you didn't find out about it 10 years sooner, isn't it's not anyone's fault. It's just, kind of where it hit in your journey as you described.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have been ready when I was younger. You know what I'm saying? That's what I have to remind myself. Don't get me wrong. I do say, "Ooh, I wish I would have," but then I'm like, "No, you're where you need to be at this particular moment in your life."
Yeah, that's so true. This relates a bit to actually the very first question that we got, which was from, I believe, Kira or Kyra. I'm sorry if I said your name wrong, who asked, what were your fears or reservations before making the career transition?
What are my fears or reservations? Was I gonna get a job? Because when I was conducting my preliminary research, one thing that I kept always thinking about UX was that it's oversaturated, it's very hard, it takes about 6 months to a year to find a job, and things of that nature. And then also transparent. I was going through my transition. So I started transitioning March 1st of last year. And I didn't know how people were going to take me. I didn't know where my transition was going to lead me. And so, even though I was at that moment at a ed tech company, and they saw the transition, I didn't know how that was going to move forward. And then, if I don't tell people, people don't know. And that's one thing that I had to come to the realization. Like, I always think, oh my God, people know, people know, people know. And they don't know unless I tell them. So those would be my biggest fears. And then also, was I going to be successful? Was I going to be able to show that I truly knew what I was doing and what I learned? And that's why you said her name was Kyra. That's why Kyra, when I got to like my second month at Ally, I really started just bawling every day because I'm just like, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I feel like they're gonna fire me, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I don't want to have to start over. I was just going through all of this, and I knew that to quote book title, the only mountain was me.
I love that's a great quote. We are kind of, I think, our own biggest critics quite often, and other people are really like our biggest cheerleaders. So, yeah, I guess on the flip side, we have a question from Drew who asks, "What was it about UX UI that captivated or motivated you, and made you really interested in pursuing this?" He asks, "Is it the chance to build better products, to have some sort of impact in the field? Was it that, something else, a combo?"
It was mainly to have an impact on users because majority of my career, even since I was like in high school, was in customer service. And I always wanted to provide excellent customer service. That didn't always happen because let's keep it real, I do have mood swings, but it was my goal. And when I became a teacher, so many students learn different ways. Everybody has different uh, learning challenges, things of that nature. And so between that, between my ed tech roles where I was actually in the field working with people, I said, how can I make an impact on millions of users? And when I found out about UX design, as we all know, is user experience, I said this would be ideal for me. And also, and I'm not going to lie, I'm going to be honest. Part of the reason why I wanted to get into it as well is when I worked at Capitol Records, when I worked at ed tech roles, when we were going in person, things of that nature, the creative people always seemed to have fun. They were always like in the fly hip clothes, and they were able to be their authentic selves. And I would look from afar and I would say, dang, I'm jealous because I'm this person in a shell and I'm not able to truly be me. And so it makes me so happy that I have been accepted in this field being what you see.
I think that's really incredible. It's so cool to hear how your story, was one of many transitions
Mhm.
and how this, transitioning into a career in UX UI design also allowed you to, have a job that was going to be creatively fulfilling and also help you express your own identity and show up, kind of as your authentic
It
self too.
really,
So yeah, that's
it really,
really cool. We've got another question from someone who I think actually has kind of some similarities with their desire to transition away from the education field. So Yuji has said, I currently teach design and art, but I'm looking to get away from the education industry. I'm entirely self-taught. Other than design language and the technical skills, is there something that this course, UX Academy, gave you that you couldn't get doing it yourself?
ooh. Well, really understanding the design process as a whole. So the research, information architecture, prototyping, wireframing, those are things that Design Lab really taught me. They really also helped me to feel comfortable being in front of other designers and being critiqued on my work. Because depending upon how deep you are in the process at the moment, when you get a job, especially if you're working at like a bigger company such as myself, you're going to have critiques. And there's going to be hundreds of people in there from all varying levels, and you're going to get your 10 to 20 minutes of fame. And you're going to have people asking you all different types of questions. And Design Lab prepared me not to go off because sometimes, well, let me make sure I be careful how I say this, because when I think about it, I am very sensitive. So I had to come to the realization that people weren't necessarily trying to be mean about the work that I did. They just wanted to get a better understanding. And so one of the things that you guys have probably heard before is that UX designers always ask the question of why. And that used to get on my nerves because I'm like, I just told you. But they want you to go deeper. And as they ask those questions, you begin to realize what they're trying to get at. And you begin to say, well, why did I think about it that way? And maybe I can think about it in another light, from another perspective. And so Design Lab has really prepared me for so many different things. But what I will say, and this is something that Emily always stated to us, is that Design Lab is simply a foundation, the boot camp. Please do not go in to your new job thinking that you know everything, because you will not. You are going to learn new things. I remember one of my colleagues was like, oh, would you love to help us with UAT testing? I was like, user testing? Of course. They was like, no, user acceptance testing. I was like, well, what's the difference? There's a difference. It's very complex. and it's very tedious. It's not like the user testing that you know. So there's so many different things that I am learning even now. And so I just want to make sure that people understand that so they won't go into their new role feeling like, well, they didn't tell me this, they didn't tell me that. You're going to learn as time goes on.
I think that's a really helpful perspective because that's kind of the world we live in. It's evolving and changing so quickly. So even if you were prepared with 100% of the knowledge of all things related to UX UI on the day you graduate from the boot camp, you know, the very next day, something will have changed or evolved, or there will be something new to learn. So I think that like continuous mindset of what can I learn? And also what you were talking about with just the feedback process. I think it's kind of a process of uncovering the assumptions that we all make when we do our work. And that's so integral to the UX design process, is getting that feedback from other people, because that can help you better understand, the assumptions you made, or how you could maybe, account for those in the next iteration. So.
And can I just say one quick thing about portfolios?
Please.
So that's really a big part of the design lab process. And as I've said earlier, and I try to go above and beyond. So I wanted to first start within Webflow. If you know about Webflow, you know it's difficult. That didn't end up working. So I went to Wix. Finished my portfolio within Wix, but then something happened and I didn't like it. So I moved everything to Square. And that's where my portfolio is now. So the point I'm trying to make is, yes, your portfolio is important and that is going to be your ticket in the door. But don't try to be what you're not. I'm not a graphic designer. I'm not an illustrator. So I used to get really upset and be my worst critic when I would look at somebody who drew their face and had these nice little interactions, and mine was just as static as it could be. But, and I wanted to like emulate, like, oh, I need to figure that out. The best advice someone told me is just simply get it done. Make those revisions and those tweaks as you move on so that you can get your first role. Because at the end of the day, if you're trying to become a UXer, and that is truly going to be the focus of your role, that is what your hiring manager is going to be looking for, your thinking process. Now, if there is a specialty in illustration and UX, then of course that is where you're going to need to have that highlighted. So don't get too caught up in trying to have like this fancy UX portfolio, because there's no shade to anybody. They're my friends. I've said this to them. I know people who have had a jacked up portfolio and they still got a job.
I love that. Yeah, I think the messaging of like, play to your strengths and know yourself, and really just represent yourself and your skills, however you could best do that, is great advice. We had a very popular question from one of the people in the audience that's kind of related to this approach of like, what is the best way to go about landing a job? So Katya has asked, do you think we should start with an internship or apprenticeship? Because I've been looking for a job for a month and a half now and only getting rejections because I don't have any professional experience.
Katya, is that correct? So I'm gonna be honest with you. I think that you should apply to whatever is of interest to you. I tell people to not really focus solely on apprenticeships and internships, because Katya, I don't know how old you are, but so many times I try to do that too. And you know what they told me? I wasn't in college, I was too old, things of that nature. So I could only go for like those true jobs. Please understand this, and I'm so glad that you asked this question. My current job wanted 7 years of experience. Do I have 7 years of experience? No. Don't let them wanting 3 years, 5 years, years, keep you from applying. I was on I was on the side that you are on at one point. So I know, like, oh my God, girl, I've heard this before. It's a cliche, things of that nature. I get it. I really do. Because when you get those rejections, they really hurt. Because that means somebody did not want to move you forward and you have to start over again. I get it. But keep applying because there may be something about you in particular that the recruiter or the hiring manager sees that they're like, okay, she doesn't have the years of experience, but we want to move forward with you. And I've seen that happen so many times. My good friend Amy Lima, she had an apprentice at Pinterest because that's what she got. I have other friends who, they did freelance work. I did a little bit of freelance work before I landed my role. Just wherever you can, and don't discredit volunteer work. Put it on your resume because I had a freelance role through Design Lab. They didn't pay me anything. But as soon as I put it on my resume, boom, people started reaching out to me.
I think that's really good advice. And again, just like some more inspiration that everyone comes at this their own way. There's no one path up the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish that we could continue the conversation because this has been really just a pleasure speaking with you, Nikita. But we are at time for today. I want to be respectful to you, to the folks tuning in, and just say once more, thank you so much for being here. Thanks to everyone who joined us for their great participation and engagement in the chat and asking such good questions. You all who've been here today, you heard Nikita offer her open-ended invitation to connect on LinkedIn. So make sure, if you're reaching out to her, that you give a little context that you participated in this presentation today so she knows that you're also a Design Lab student. And hope you all have a wonderful Friday and a great weekend. And we're really excited to have you start or continue your Design Lab learning journey. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.